iSupport.
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 iSupport, make a difference.
iSupport is brought to you by Sari Honda.
Hello, I'm your host, Payal and I have my co-host, Kyle, with me today. Now, yes, our names rhyme, Kyle and Payal, but believe me, that's not the only reason we're together today. Kyle is a student and I am a parent. And we both have a question in our mind, which is about career. He wants to know about his career, which path to take. Will he ever get a chance to change his decision in future? Will he have to stick on it? And so on. For me as a parent, I want to know, am I intervening too much with my kids' decision? Should I let them be on their own? Do they need guidance? So on and so forth. And that's the reason why today we have a special guest with us. Let's welcome Mr. Peter McGee, who is a career planner, a perfect person for today's talk. Welcome to the show, Peter.
All right, thank you very much for having me.
Pleasure is all ours. So I already said that you are into career planning, but please tell us what made you get into this career, and it's been how long since you're into this?
Sure. Well, I have a career background myself in economic development, in marketing, and communications, and sort of corporate government. I've been in sales, retail. I've been kind of around the career block a little bit myself.
Yeah.
And what I noticed, especially when I was working in economic development, where I had the opportunity to meet with a lot of employers, is that there was a big disconnect between new people entering the job market, young people,
right,
and employers.
Okay.
Employers are having a very difficult time connecting with young workers.
All right.
And young workers, people entering the job market for the first time, are having a very difficult time articulating their own value proposition or really understanding what employers are looking for from them.
And what makes you say that? What's the disconnection here?
Well, you hear it from both sides, especially from the employer side, and it really takes the form of a lot of kind of generational bias of, I don't hire young people anymore because I hired one and they were lazy, or they didn't do what I asked them to do, or all these different things. They're entitled. And from the young person's point of view, the employer didn't offer me anything that I was asking them. You know, they asked me to show up and push a broom for 6 months, and I never got to do anything else, and that's it. So there's this generational problem going on between employers and employees, especially young employees. And one of the issues really comes down to what I believe is confidence on the part of the young person to articulate, first understand, but then articulate what it is they're bringing to the table when it comes to a business. Young people have a lot more to offer than they think they do. Even if their resume is a big blank sheet of paper, they have so much to offer just by virtue of the fact that they're young, that they've grown up with technology. There's so many different things that they can bring, and it's unique to each individual as well. And so the idea of career exploration takes on a whole new form when you have the unique element of each person.
Absolutely. So the disconnect between the employer and the employee, specifically the young generation, could it be because the young generation or the person who's applying for the job ended up choosing a wrong profession maybe?
Well, it could be. And I think a lot of emphasis is put on right now of making the right decision first of what career you're going to get into. So much pressure is put onto young people to pick the right thing.
Right.
And then once they pick it, their entire social circle, especially their parents, really hold them to it. If you decide at age 16 that you're going to be an engineer, then you would better not deviate from that plan. Otherwise, you're going to be seen as a failure, or that you weren't hardworking enough or weren't disciplined enough to follow through.
Right.
When what actually could be going on is that when you're 16, you have no idea what an engineer does. It just sounds good, or it looks good on paper, or you know that they make a lot of money, or whatever it is.
Right.
It sounds good when you tell your parents that you want to be an engineer. But then once you actually start talking to other engineers or talking to instructors or professors in that discipline, you start realizing, oh, this wasn't for me at all.
Right.
And that's a good thing. It's a good thing to actually get out and discover and talk to people and ask questions, meaningful questions, and have these great discussions, because you learn so much about yourself.
Exactly.
It's very, very difficult to do career research, meaningful career research, from behind a computer.
Right.
But that's how we're we're doing it. That's how we're teaching young people
Yes.
to do that, is to search job forums or to, look up to see what are the 10 most in-demand jobs for 2017. It's a silly way of going about it because in 2022, when you're actually trained for that job, that will be a completely different top 10 list.
Absolutely.
So-
Absolutely.
Sorry, but so what is the best way to exactly narrow down or even choose? So instead of Googling or searching up, what exactly should a student like me do?
Sure. Well, that's a great question. The first thing that you need to do is have a little bit of a self-analysis. There's something in business called a SWOT analysis, which
Yeah.
is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And that's typically used just in the context of a business.
Okay.
It should be
Yes.
used in the context of an individual as well. What are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? The reason you need to know that is not so that you can spend more time eliminating your weaknesses. It's so that you can identify your strengths and double down on them, triple down on them. If you're a great public speaker, naturally, at your high school, anytime that there's an opportunity to MC a fashion show
Right.
or to do anything where you get to talk to a big group of people and you're super comfortable with that and you love doing it and you get better every time you do it,
Right.
that is such an important thing to know about yourself because it will come into play later when you're pitching your services essentially to an employer. To say, I know that the job description doesn't say anything about public speaking, but let me tell you what I read out of this and where I could be of use to your company, I think.
Right.
Both in doing the job that I'm here to interview for, but when you hire me, you get a little something extra. And here's
Yeah.
what that will look like for your company. And here's what it will mean for your industry.
Right. Interestingly, recently I met an educator and she suggested something that was an eye-opener to me. She said, instead of studying a course, applying for a job, doing all that, you first volunteer for the field you're interested in. So for example, if you want to be a preschool teacher or, whatever, so go to a preschool, volunteer a few hours, and then evaluate. Are you really liking this career? You're liking your job or not? If you are, and you're sure, then go for the course. And to me, that made so much of sense, because you're getting a hands-on experience and then decision-making kind of becomes easier, if I may say.
Absolutely. So it's a smart woman. She's absolutely right. Volunteering is great, especially when you're young because the stakes are low. There's a very good chance that you don't have a mortgage, you don't have 2 kids that need to be fed.
Right.
There isn't that urgency on getting the paycheck
Right.
often. So you've got all of this flexibility to go out and try things, right? It's like picking your favorite type of food and your favorite restaurant and only going to that restaurant forever.
Yes.
No, you want to try different things.
Absolutely.
And the other thing I want to say about volunteering is that not all volunteer opportunities are created equal. There are lots of opportunities in the volunteer world that will allow you to kind of see behind the curtain of the industry that you're looking at.
Right.
So it's one thing to volunteer, say, at the BC Summer Games or something, where you're really only there to pick up garbage. There's nothing wrong with picking up garbage, it makes the whole event better. But if that's the only thing you're doing in that volunteer opportunity, you're not learning that much about yourself.
Right.
And so any opportunity that you can find where you're contributing your ideas, you're seeing the process as much as you can, those are really great.
Right.
And also, there are more chances to volunteer than we think there are. Because we really just look on, volunteer websites and say what companies are.
Looking for volunteers.
Every company is willing to take on a volunteer if you make your value proposition strong enough.
Okay.
So for example, if I'm interested in getting into home building, but I don't want to start off by going through all the expensive courses and trying to land an apprenticeship and all that, what I personally would do is go around to find new construction happening in my area, and I would track down the foreman and say, would it be okay if I brought my own equipment and my own my boots and my hard hat and all that, and I'm not going to touch any tools, but I'm really interested in your industry, and I just want to see if I'm comfortable on a job site. Can I come? I'll come an hour early, and I'll sweep, and I'll just
Yes.
clean up after your crew.
Right.
Because what you're there to do is not to get a job. You're there to determine, am I even comfortable on a job site? Because that's a very useful thing to know before you pay for all the courses,
Right.
before you buy a truck,
Absolutely.
and before you buy all the tools.
Absolutely.
watching Close Look! My name is Mohammed, and you're watching Close Look.
Hey, I'm Johnny Staub.
And I'm Nira Arora from 94.5 Virgin Radio.
And you're watching
Close Look!
iSupport.
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 iSupport, make a difference.
iSupport is brought to you by SETI Honda.
So tell me something, Peter. How soon is too soon to start planning a career? Because why am I asking you that? Because even in preschools, when there's preschool graduation, kids are being asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? So that's what I'm saying. Like, he's in grade 11, and preschool kids are also asked. So how soon is too soon?
So I have a 4-year-old, so this is a great question. Yes, we always say, what do you want to be when you grow up? And we ask that question every year.
Absolutely.
That question takes on a different form when you get around grade 11, right? Because then we start expecting a real answer with real deliverables attached to it.
Yeah.
You would better sign up for something that's attached to the answer that you give us.
Yeah.
But when you're 4 years old, we don't. But there is still things that you can do even at 4 and 5 years old, which is when you ask, what do you want to be when you grow up? And my son will say a firefighter. He says that every time. I can say, why? What is it about being a firefighter that appeals to you?
Right.
Because I'm sure lots of kids want to be firefighters. And even as they get older, the answer that they give will have different motivations behind it if I talk to you versus I talk to the little girl down the street versus I talk to someone else.
Absolutely.
Let's maybe take a different example than a firefighter, let's say a pharmacist. So if I have 2 grade 11 students who both say they want to be a pharmacist, it's very important that I say why. What is it about being a pharmacist that appeals to you? Because the truth is, it's very likely that neither will actually become a pharmacist. You know, they might, but on the course of becoming a pharmacist, something else might catch their eye that takes them in a different direction.
Right.
And again, that doesn't mean that they're a failure. If anything, that means that they're succeeding because they're taking notice of things. They're injecting themselves into whatever the career is that they end up in.
Right.
And it's not too prescriptive.
Okay.
And so one student might say, well, I want to be a pharmacist because, you know, when I was growing up, my dad was very unhealthy, and it was a pharmacist ultimately that talked him into a healthier lifestyle. And I want to be that conduit for someone. I want to be in a position where my knowledge and expertise is helping someone live a healthier life.
Right.
That could be one person's reason for being a pharmacist. And you could talk to someone else who also wants to be a pharmacist, but enjoys the authority aspect of it. That I want to wear a white jacket with a name tag. I want to be on a platform that's higher, physically higher than everyone else, so I can look down on them.
Oh, really?
You know, it's because if you ever notice a pharmacist, we'll usually stand up
but
higher.
I never thought like that.
Right,
Yeah.
it's an authority thing. And
Right.
so the reason that's so important is that let's assume that neither become a pharmacist.
Right.
When that plan goes away of, okay, I'm not going to be a pharmacist, at least I know something about myself now. That the thing about being a pharmacist that appealed to me was the helping the underdog, was the imparting my knowledge. So that now there's an entire other world of jobs and roles and opportunities for me, and the other person will be looking at a completely different side of the job market. Essentially, you don't have to start from scratch when you start with that self-analysis.
So what's the probability of, like, for example, me, I want to get into business. That's what I think right now. I'm only in grade 11, but you said that changes. So is there like a number you could put behind like the chances? What have you come to know of?
Well, it really depends on how unique or how niched you're getting with your career aspirations. And so saying I want to get into business is actually great because you're not being too, again, prescriptive with yourself to say, I want to own a chain of, you know, pizzerias or something like that, where it's very specific. Because the thing that we usually do in career planning, and it's the thing that I don't like about career planning at all, is that we're trying to reverse engineer a job title. I want to be the owner of a chain of pizzerias. So what do I have to do to get there?
Yeah.
See, the problem with that, and it sounds good because we're linear creatures. We love having a map to success. It's why there's so many books on here's your blueprint to happiness. You know, here's your guide, your step-by-step guide to fulfillment. We love that kind of thing and we eat it up, but it doesn't work very well in the career side of things. And it's because it's a non-linear process. You know, in game theory, you would call it an infinite game, not a finite game.
Right.
Because the problem is, once you get there, that's as far as our planning went. So what happens when you become the CEO of a chain of pizzerias and you find you don't like it at all? And it's all you wanted to do, you just love pizza. All you wanted to do was make pizzas,
Yeah.
right? And so
Maybe you wanted to be a chef instead
maybe
of
you wanted to be a chef.
chef.
Exactly. In which
Right.
case you would hire someone to be your CEO.
Yeah, right.
And so that takes a bit of conversation with yourself. It takes some self-realization. That is the most important part of planning your career. And in fact, for a long time, and I still say it from time to time, that we should actually be unplanning our careers. We shouldn't be planning them out, because all planning is reverse engineering, which works fine on short-term goals. And so if I want to graduate from university, I had better have a plan in place, because that is something that requires focus and discipline, and there's going to be a lot of distractions and a lot of opportunities for me to go astray. I need a plan, and I need to stay focused. Beyond that, though, once I get into my career, I should be intentionally unfocused. And I use this example sometimes, and it's a description of what focus means. Focus is this. Focus is putting up your blinders so that any distractions on the outside don't get in your way. When it comes to your career, or finding someone you're going to fall in love with and marry, and all of these things that are long term, all of the most interesting things are just on the outside of your blinders. And so as soon as you take them down and start looking around at industries that are not the one that you were hoping for, and start asking questions, you can do really cool things like identifying gaps in the market where there wasn't a job before, but I realize now that if I have a skill of public speaking, that I can pitch my services and create a new job where there wasn't one before.
Right. So for high schoolers, so they're at a point where they feel that I have to decide what I have to do in the future, because
I totally agree.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
No.
So for you, for example, you want to go to the university, and you must be thinking, now I have to decide what course do I want to take, and that I can decide only if I know what do I want to be when I grow up. What career am I going to take? So what do you suggest for them? Because some of them are sure, they just know what they want to do.
Right.
Some are absolutely not sure, they're blank. Some are still shuffling this one or that one, juggling between careers. So what's your suggestion or guidance to the high schoolers?
I think the biggest thing is getting out of your shell and going out and meeting people in the real world.
Okay.
And so if I'm completely sure no one's going to convince me otherwise that I'm going to be an engineer, even if you're not in a position to be convinced otherwise, you should still be going to talk to engineers, not for them to convince you otherwise, but to build a network so that as you're becoming trained as an engineer, you now have this support network in place in that industry that you can call on when you're 4 months away from graduation to say, hey, I'm going to be very soon in a position where I'll be looking for a job in this industry. And if you recall the 6 or 7 or 10 conversations we've had already, this is something I'm very keen on. Now the flip of that, if you're not really all that sure of what you want to do, it's even more reason to get out and talk to different sorts of people. I always say that it's more important to pick a bearing than a destination, and it's kind of a sailing reference, but if I'm sailing a boat, it's much more interesting for me to just say, I'm going to sail south, and I'm going to see what happens. I'm going to pick a port when I get hungry. I'm going to pull in and find a restaurant that I would not have found or I would not have been able to plan for. But it also allows me to just kind of navigate with the weather and adjust and build the skill of sailing rather than of map reading.
You're watching Close Look! My name is Mohammed, and you're watching Close Look.
Hey, I'm Johnny Staub.
And I'm Nira Aurora from 94.5 Virgin Radio.
And you're watching
Close Look.
I tell you what, as a parent, it makes me feel uncomfortable. It makes me feel uncomfortable that my child is just is just going to take up a course and say, oh, mom, just relax. I'll see
Right.
what comes next. Oh, I'm taking up another course. Don't worry, I have my options open. So I know it's important to have your own space to be able to decide what you want to do. And I shouldn't be pushing someone. You would not like someone to push
No,
you
yeah,
and say
totally
you
agree.
have to be this.
No.
Of course, I totally understand that. But I feel that there has to be a balance.
Right.
Neither, we should give them one, profession that no, you have to stick to that.
Right.
And as a student, you shouldn't have this pressure that no, I have to be a doctor. Nor it should be too wide open that at the end you're like wandering around. Correct me if I'm wrong. I feel maybe they should, bring it down to 3 or 4 options.
Right.
Take your time, maybe until high school, maybe after your university or something, and then just bring it down to 3 options or 4 options, and then focus on those 3 and 4. Because otherwise, I feel it's too wide of an option to get confused and get lost and wandered, and finally not making it to any. I could be wrong, but
No,
what do you
you're
say?
absolutely right. And I think this is where the importance of the self-analysis part really comes in. Because how do you pick those 3 or 4
Right.
options? What most folks do is they look at some report they saw in a magazine of here are the top jobs that are hiring this year.
Right.
And again, that's a very time-limited way of looking at it. What I would do instead is that list of strengths that you made during the SWOT analysis, use those to identify not what job titles I'm narrowing down to, but what assets I'm going to develop in myself that are going to be useful in the job market.
Okay.
And so let's say, for example, HTML coding. If you code websites kind of in your spare time, you just like doing it, you code WordPress websites. That should be in there of skills that you're bringing to the table that won't lock you down to an industry, because all industries need someone with that skill.
Right.
But instead will narrow your focus of what role am I going to play and what value am I going to bring to the job market. And if
Right.
you can do that, then all that comes next is going out again and talking to people. And I think the fear, and you nailed it, is that if you consider too many things, you won't pick anything. And you'll just be on the
Exactly.
couch and you won't do anything.
Right.
But over the last 3 weeks, I've had 6 meetings.
Yeah.
3 in manufacturing, 2 in construction, and 1 in agriculture.
That's comforting.
Exactly.
Yeah, I see some direction there.
And what was really neat is that even though they're completely different industries, I noticed a thread that followed all of them. That they
Right.
all had a challenge of converting on a website. Not necessarily
Right.
sales converting, but really educating the public on what they do through the power of their website. They just didn't do it very well.
Peter, I have one more question for you. So, as a career planner, if who are the people who can approach you? Like, what levels in their career or education? Like, can he approach you as a high schooler? Can I approach you as a parent? So, who all can approach you?
Sure. As bad as it is in marketing to say you market to everyone can use my services. Really, anyone can use it. It's a benefit to everyone. But the folks who it's of most benefit to, I believe, are the students like yourself, grade 11, grade 12, grade 10,
Right.
and their parents,
Okay.
as well as university students and their parents. And I always say "and their parents"
Right.
because that relationship is so key, and it takes so many different forms in terms of its influence on career decision making.
Right.
Sometimes it's fear-based, like I said. Sometimes it's
Yeah.
more of an encouragement side of things. You know, if I can convince mom and dad, they'll have an easier time convincing son or daughter than I will as a stranger.
Right.
Or sometimes it's the flip of that they will take no advice their parents give them, even if it's the right advice, and they need an outside person
Right.
to come and do that.
Right. Great, awesome. That was a great amount of information that we got from
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you so much for your time,
Thank you for
and it
having
was
me.
awesome having you over.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's Peter, Payal, and Kyle signing off. Bye.